Hi, welcome back to the Fal Hassan podcast. I'm here with Olivia Gambelin, if I'm pronouncing correctly.
Yes, that's it.
Yes, nice, nice to meet you. Olivia, can you just give me a little introduction to yourself? That'll be great.
Yeah, and thanks for having me today, Fadl. Um, so I am Olivia Gambelin. I'm an AI ethicist. I'm also the founder of Ethical Intelligence. We're an AI ethics advisory firm. I specialize in working with entrepreneurs and startups, although have worked with many a size of corporation and many an individual. And today I am in San Francisco, although usually
Oh,
I'm a bit of a globe trotter. So sometimes it's entertaining to see where exactly I'm at with these.
yeah, it's nice to meet you. And I guess the first thing I want to just say is that it's like a quote which I found out is the biggest challenge in AI is not developing faster, bigger, and fancy models and systems. Instead, the biggest challenge is developing AI that is more efficient, transparent, and above all, more fair and free of bias. And I think you will completely agree with that, right?
Definitely. I basically, so a lot of the AI development to date was focused on that efficiency, building bigger, building faster, building more complex models. And so that's what a lot of our systems and a lot of our practices have already been built on. Now, that's not necessarily our end goal. That's not really what we're defining as success, but we still don't necessarily have the best practices to build fair and unbiased and transparent models. So that is really the biggest challenge. It's something that we want to build, but we're not necessarily sure how to.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is because it's sort of like human nature. Like I think when you develop AI, it's so you understand more about yourself, and because you try to create systems that are technically better for you, but they have all these sometimes biases, and we can't go through them because we have biases of our own. And how do you ensure having systems that are better than us making decisions that we don't know how they got there? Sometimes we just know that these are the decisions that they come up with. And how do you trust these systems, that they are better than us? Like, how do you respond to that?
Well, in understanding and setting a limitation for what we mean by better than us is one of the first places to start. So, an AI system can be better at computing a very massive amount of information and being able to distill insights from that on a scale that a human wouldn't be able to. It won't be better at us, though, in understanding the edge cases and the instances where it's not usually not the normal case in the data or not the normal case just in life. And so humans are still better at being able to understand the bigger picture and how those decisions and how a system is placed into, let's say, society or into its context. And so being able to understand that limitation of this is what this application, what this AI is capable of. And yes, it's going to be really powerful at doing this assigned task, but still being able to keep up as a human on the other end to understand where that task ends and where we either need a different system or a human at that end or in that loop to be making further decisions. So it's that balance between the two and really using AI as that tool set and that powerful tool for human decision making. And really, it's that kind of balance that we're looking for.
Yeah, because it can be I think for me one of the things I get sometimes really scared about AI, and mainly because of the fact that it can keep evolving and it can get better and better, but it's to a point where we have no control sometimes. And as you said, we need a human in the system, in the loop of that. We need them AI to be as a tool to help us rather than to be something that we can use against other humans or for it to grow on its own. um, do you ever worry about the future of AI a lot? I know it's a very sci-fi kind of question, but but I think it's one of the very interesting question to ask.
Yeah, I get that question a lot, especially since I'm an ethicist. People
Yeah.
assume that I stay up late at night worried about AI, which is true. There is some truth there. I think I am hopeful, though. I'm seeing how people are starting to conceptualize AI and conceptualize how we use it and the importance of ethics in the development process. So I guess it does worry me. It does worry me that we're putting too much trust in our ability to build these systems and aren't being critical enough of our own abilities to build AI. But I do have a lot of hope there that times are changing. People are more focused on the larger impact of these systems, and they're more focused on the societal impact that we're creating through different tech software even. So I think it's a very cool time to actually be involved in this field, to be able to go, okay, I'm building, say, a piece of software, I'm building an AI, and I'm conscious about what it's going to do to my end users. I'm not just building it to build it, I'm building it very meaningfully and with a lot of intention. So for me, yes, there is that fear that we're missing that intention, or that we aren't giving enough criticism to these systems, but there is still a lot of hope that we're becoming more and more intentional with the design, and that we still, we're still the people in charge. We're still a big boss. We can still do this. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's definitely difference in focus. Is there definitely a difference in focus of ethics right now than it was like say 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years? Much more. Yeah. Like I think I read a lot of blogs, and people have to think of ethics as a service now, uh, and to include an AI or some ethicist in every like sort of companies, especially if you're building AI technologies from the bottom level of design to the top level, like through having an AI ethicist throughout the board. Like, is there any difficulties in like asking companies to do this, or like any problems that come in this sort of like field?
So a lot of the larger organizations, large enterprise, they are already incorporating ethicists. They have ethics departments that they're building out. A lot of the barriers there are just, it's a new department, it's a new position. So understanding how that department works and what that position is responsible for, that is a current barrier. Many more companies though are starting to broach that barrier and being able to take in ethics departments. We've worked with large enterprise, we've worked with large companies that are setting up and establishing their ethics department. We've worked alongside them to make sure that that department is well established. The other end of the spectrum, when we're working more with startups, the barrier there is really just access to resources. They can't necessarily afford an entire ethics department, and some struggle at just being able to afford an ethicist. And so looking and creating resources for startups to be able to still have that same expertise and have that same ability in-house is really, really important. So a lot what we do with ethical intelligence is look how we can create products and services for startups to be able to have that expertise. It's very important. And as we're going further and further, we're understanding exactly when and where that expertise is best utilized within a company structure.
Do you like have often fight with companies, like, or like when it comes to like when you're like developing a product and you have to like argue with like the internal employees about oh, this is wrong and this is not right, or do you have like any of those like problems that you have with companies that they do something and
I have to say, I'm actually very lucky. I have not been in that situation yet. And I think that's really because the people that I work with are so well intentioned, and they have this motivation of we want to build this right. And so it's less of that fight of, this isn't quite right, or this isn't going well, or that's not good. And it's more of, hey, maybe that's not the best decision. This decision looks like a stronger one based off of both business markers as well as ethical markers. So same kind of success metrics, just one for ethics, one for business. This looks like the stronger decision. It aligns more with the values and what you're trying to uphold within the company. And there's not really that friction there. It's more of, oh, okay, thank you. I needed that perspective. I didn't realize.
Oh yeah, so they're more accepting that they're actually realizing that this is beneficial and all right. I think like I'm like a software. I'm like a not software computer science student, fourth year right now, at the University of Edinburgh, the university that you studied in, you did a master's in, and like I'm working. I like AI a lot. Like in terms of like I like developing AI systems and stuff, but I never really think about the ethics behind it. Like, um It's like as of recent I have been thinking, and that's mainly because when you develop technologies, you don't, as a like a student, like I don't really think about the ethics. I'm like, okay, I want to build something cool and see how that develops. But definitely, for example, some technologies like, suppose GPT-3, we like heard of it, like it produces natural like human like text. um, those that looked really cool to me. Like I was like initially like, oh wow, that's amazing, but it kind of like got me a little worried. I mean, where do we like draw the line in developing technologies that are, let's say, like it's good, it's awesome, but then in the future it looks like it can be very dangerous. Or like even deep fake technology, like it seemed really cool at first, like being able, it seemed like a very advanced technology, but it can cause a lot of problems. Like you can put a face of someone on top of someone else and create fake news, or different. It's very horrible. Like where do we like draw the line in going further in the field of technology? Like how do we stuff?
That's a great question. And one of the hard things is we can't necessarily put a strong line down on the ground saying that we can't go beyond this. I mean, there are some things, for example, like social scoring. That's a pretty strong line that we're starting to set. Especially, you'll see with the EU regulations that's a hard line. So we are starting to understand some of those hard lines of don't cross this. We have explored the potential outcomes of that type of technology, and there's no good outcome, or there's not a strong enough case for that outcome or for that piece of technology. The hard thing though is technology develops very quickly. And so there are times where we want to be able to have, let's say, the freedom to move around and try and innovate, and literally try out a piece of technology to see what happens with it. But sometimes in those cases, we discover, okay, this is not a good piece of technology. So there are instances where even before testing a piece of technology that you can go, no, there's no good use case for this. There's no good outcome. The risks are too high. Then there are other ones where it's kind of this medium gray zone where it does associate, there are some risks with it, but there are good outcomes that can come from it. So it's being able to test that in a controlled environment to understand. I think of other ones where it's, just go out and try it as more of the misuse case of technology. But another thing that you were saying that was really interesting is you are studying computer science and you don't really think about ethics. The great thing is people are starting to consider ethics more. But what I like to stress to people is, especially engineers and computer scientists, is you don't have to do this alone. There's this fear of I have to take it all on my shoulders. And no, you have ethicists, you have people that specialize in this thinking. And this skill set to help with those decisions so that you can concentrate on building the fun, cool stuff and not have that worry in the back of your mind of like, what am I actually creating? Could this be harmful? You have someone else that's sitting there going, you're good. Wait, pause. Let's come back. Let's readdress that, or keep going. You're good. So it is that there's that team effort there. That's really important.
I think that's what's great about ethical intelligence. It makes it more accessible, and for people to think about ethics and to see how we can use ethics in because like for me, like I don't, as you said, like and as I said, like I don't really think about far ahead in terms of that. And and I do see sometimes as ethics as like, at one point I did had taken ethics course, and I saw it as a kind of a little boring and stuff like that. Not just to be honest, okay, but yeah, and I was like, oh no, is maybe because the course was not as great as I thought it would be. But like as of recently, I've been thinking a lot about it, and it really when I think about philosophy, for example, I really am more motivated to do computer science for some reason, because it allows me to think better in developing systems, which I never thought of would actually help. Like I didn't think philosophy and computer science were actually kind of like related. Maybe I thought they were like separate entities, but then it feels like there's so much about it. And as we're growing, technology is growing in the world, we are constantly like trying to build, for example, AI that is more like us, and trying to get to that human level or like sentient level technology. And how has philosophy shaped you as like person, like, and because you took a master's in philosophy at the University of Edinburgh, like, how has that shaped you to thinking different?
In a lot of different ways. So one of the things that I like to, so in a serious way, I'll give my serious answer, and then I have kind of a funny story along with that as well. But seriously, think of philosophy. You know, you go to the gym to work out your body and you build up muscles over time. Philosophy is like that, but for mental muscles. So you're constantly working out your mind, your critical thinking, and your your logical reasoning. You're constantly thinking. You're constantly building up that muscle, so that when it comes time to critically reason and think through what is often quite complex questions and a lot of gray, a lot of nuance, your brain's trained. It's you know, you've got that muscle already in place. So for me, I see philosophy being this fantastic tool set that I use every day. Between speaking now on podcasts to the work that I do, it's really a fantastic tool. And so I think it's really shaped, again, my interest, my career, and what I do, but also my day-to-day life. The funny story behind it, though, is I also did a bachelor's. My bachelor's degree is in philosophy as well.
Oh, sorry.
And the joke there was, when I was studying philosophy, I studied down in Texas at a university called Baylor. And as it got closer and closer to graduation, people were like, "What are you doing with a philosophy degree?" Granted, it was philosophy, and then I had a double minor in entrepreneurship and Italian, and people were looking at me like, "What are you doing?" Quite literally. But they're like, "What would you possibly do with a philosophy degree?" And I started joking, world domination. And so it's a running joke with my family, my close friends, that it's just world domination. That's what I use my philosophy degree for. I very sarcastically, I should stress.
Yeah, of course.
But something interesting you said about how computer science and philosophy actually do connect, or ethics and computer science also connect. So at the base of everything, you have logic. That's logical reasoning. The part that connects is computer science came out of mathematical reasoning. It's all still based in logic, though. Ethics came out of critical thinking, all still based in logic. So they do have the same root, which is what you're seeing actually when you have these connections. You're like, well, philosophy is really helping my computer science. That's because they do connect. You're strengthening that logic muscle in your brain.
Yeah, and I guess, like, because like philosophy, like when you even developing like sort of tests and stuff like that, you think of like for any code or something, you think of like how I would think in that way, like what would make sense in the real world, and how do we sort of connect different endpoints, and you think in a very philosophical way sometimes, and I think that's helped me a lot when developing code and stuff. Like I think very, oh, this makes sense. And I can't explain it in a very philosophical way because like I don't do philosophy as much, but then I do feel like there's so much correlation. And one I just want to get back into talking about something very important, the self-driving cars. And I think that's I don't think that was the best segue into another topic, but like and but then self-driving cars is the best example of, and I think like everyone needs to hear this in terms of like when you deploy self-driving cars in the world, and they do reduce human error. Uh, but like there's always like this dilemma which happens, like where the car has to choose between two people. If it's gonna like get into a crash, it has to choose between two people, and then what people, or like who does it choose, like what does the car choose? And that brings us sort of like an ethical dilemma. Can you explain on that? Like I think that's
Yeah, so this is built off of a very, very old philosophical thought experiment called the trolley problem, which is helping philosophers back in the day understand the difference between different ethical schools of thought, which I know sounds I'm getting a bit jargony now, but there are different understandings, different schools of thought and ethics about how we approach applying values, how we live out values, essentially. And the trolley problem would help people understand, oh, okay, I see the difference here. Like, for example, if you had the trolley going down the track, you had to pull the lever to either kill one person versus 5 people. Someone from a utilitarian school of thought would say, well, you have to kill the one person because it's better, it's maximizing outcome, or it's maximizing best possible outcome for the most possible people by not killing 5 and instead just killing 1. But if you instead came from the school of thought of deontology, you wouldn't be able to pull the lever because that was an act towards killing. You had to make a decision to kill someone, so you wouldn't pull the lever. So that kind of it breaks those out. But when it comes now to self-driving cars, it's really kind of funny to see how that thought experiment has actually become real life situation. And it's interesting because there's a lot of fixation on that problem. And I think part of that fixation on that exact problem, it's not a very common problem. We haven't heard of an instance yet in the news where a self-driving car has had to choose between 2 things to run over, 2 people to run over. But it is something that we constantly bring up. And I think that's really important to realize, is that is showing our nervousness or our fear as people around these cars of not understanding which it will choose in that instance. Like, we're much more comfortable if there's a person behind the wheel having to make that decision. Yeah, sure, we don't want a person to be making that decision and we'll still be upset with them, but it's a person versus a machine where you can't see, you can't look into its eyes and ask, why did you choose the baby versus the grandma? Because as long as you can get a reason behind it, at least you understand why. So I think that's something that hints at one aspect of our fear of just not being able to understand. And the second one being us, the fear that no one's going to be held accountable. So if it's faulty software, or if the car runs over someone that really shouldn't have been run over, or so on, that no one's going to be held accountable. No one's going to be responsible for the fact that, hey, you built something that caused a lot of harm and pain, and there's no consequence for that. So that question of who to run over, there's a lot more complexity behind it of why that's such a prevalent question going on right now.
Yeah, you can't put a self-driving car in jail, right?
I mean, it wouldn't really do anything though. It just kind of sit there. So
yeah, it can face 10 years easily.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, sure, why not?
Yeah, but the thing is that it's scary as well because I think with humans, if you're ever in that situation, we don't know how it's a very instantaneous reaction sometimes, and we have to do something. But with a machine, I don't know if this is true or not, but it runs at a much faster pace. It's actually thinking at a much faster pace than a human does. So it makes basically a decision faster than we do, and it has more time to make that decision. Don't you think? It has a lot more time. So it's kind of scary in terms of that it actually chose this one. Like if it had to choose between 2 options, it chose this option. And for humans, I think it's more of a reaction. To choose one thing is like a choice, but I think a machine, it actually decides on that particular choice. So that could be very scary because the machine thinks much faster, and yeah, and yeah, we're basically like ants. um, I guess because it's almost like time out. I'll just say what do you learned about human nature, through the lens of your work? What have you learned about humans in general? Because when developing AI, I think you learn a lot about humans, but what is one thing or something very interesting that you've learned about humans through the lens of your work?
Yeah. Well, just as you study computer programming to understand life, I study ethics to understand life and why we're here and what that means. So I've learned a lot through this experience. I've learned that there are aspects of human nature that are very messy, meaning they don't necessarily follow patterns, or it's just edge case after edge case, but it's in that nuance, it's in that messiness that there's really a lot of beauty about human nature. It makes us very interesting creatures. It keeps things from being monotonous. There's a lot more to human nature than sometimes we'll give ourselves credit for, and through that, and then the work that I do with ethical intelligence when I'm working with clients, I've learned the passion that people can have for making sure that they are building something good and right. So that one's been less of philosophy and less of ethics applied, and more of just watching people come together, and the curiosity that they can approach these challenges with, and the devotion they have to doing the right thing. That's really been an amazing process to see just through my day-to-day work.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely like, and I think what you guys are doing at Ethical Intelligence is great, because even I've gotten interested in following ethics. And just, I'll ask you one last question, and I don't know if this is like a great question, but I think it is. Is creating a super intelligent machine ethical?
I mean, that is, people ask that all the time. I have two answers to this. Because you've got the singularity problem of, what if we create a
Yeah,
super intelligence that's smarter than us, and then it creates something that's smarter than itself, and then it just
yeah,
infinite. I have one argument that I always put in there of, what if we create something more intelligent than us, and that thing goes, why in the world would you create something smarter than yourself? That's stupid.
yeah,
So why we wouldn't have that exponential growth. But my other point there is, it's super intelligence only capable in one very narrow sense, and logical in logic. I think there's a lot more to intelligence, to human intelligence, than just what we have in terms of artificial intelligence. We as humans incorporate emotion and consciousness and sensations. We have a lot more input than just facts, which is really what AI is built off of. It is facts and data points. And so we can have super intelligence in the sense of off of facts and data points, but I firmly believe that misses still a lot of really the intelligence that humans bring to the picture, and that human nature brings. So, I would say that building a super intelligent, I don't know if I would ever call an AI a super intelligence. I think also the ethical implications with that is more ensuring how we would use it. So if we were saying, oh, this thing is omnipotent and it knows everything, and we don't have any question, I think that's where it becomes ethically wrong to say, okay, only this super intelligence can ever be right, because that's not true. We as humans still have further input that super intelligence would not be able to take in. So I think, yeah, that's kind of a long roundabout answer, and a few answers all together. But yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with super intelligence.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm really excited about it, but it's also like, I also question it a lot, and I just it definitely seems like it's very exciting, but also it could go both ways for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, I guess that's it. Thank you so much for coming, Olivia. It's been such an honor to talk to you, and hopefully, like, I get to talk to you again, maybe one more time. But yeah, nice meeting you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Paddle.
Well, yeah. Okay, guys. See you.